girls, our goal today is that we are going to be able to use a checklist to help us write our conclusion now, as well as other parts of our essay. For example, the transitions, we're going to take a look at that today too, okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead and read transitions and ending. You can circle those in your rubric. And as you're reading it, you can circle or underline keywords that maybe you haven't recognized. But just like before in our previous lessons, I want you to read them silently to yourself. What is expected of you to have in your use of transitions and when you're writing your ending today. So read that silently to yourself.
Okay, I'll read it silently to myself.
Jason, take this.
Can I just take this one? No. Well, I'm gonna read that one.
Alright, tell somebody next to you, what did you notice?
I noticed.
That you need to have as far as transitions go and for
Me too.
ending. What do you need?
I noticed that too, Jacob. Did you notice, Deja? Did you notice, Jesse?
I haven't looked yet.
Oh, well, maybe you should get on that.
Good. I like that thought. Okay, so eyes up here now. I heard some good discussions over here. What did you guys say? What do you need to have in your ending or use of transitions? What did this group say over here?
We said that we agree that we transition words like
Okay, right. You need a transition before you write your conclusion.
I use the setup so I kind of have a transition.
Perfect. Awesome. So you can use my thought prompts that I've given you, but you have the freedom to use other transitions. You don't just have to use the thought prompts and make every paragraph a cookie cutter paragraph. You have that freedom to add transitions in the front of your paragraphs, and especially in your conclusion. Now, in your conclusion, it says that you restate the important parts or points. What is it? What are they basically saying you need to restate or have in your conclusion again? What do you need to have? Restate again. But bigger than that, your whole
Thesis statement.
So we've talked about that before with Raymond's Run. How whenever you do your whole paper, like at the very end, you need to have that whole thesis statement again. So I want to show you. I'm going to skip ahead here to how to conclude your essay because that's what we're really going to focus on working on today. So there are lots of ways you can conclude your essay, and I have an anchor chart with more specific details if you feel like this isn't challenging enough for you. But you can tell about yourself and the life lesson that you've learned from Red Guards. You can relay the author's message. You can have readers, leave the readers with something to think about, something powerful. And you always want to emphasize the claim in your thesis statement. So I always... when we were doing our narratives, remember I showed you the clip of Duck Dynasty and how they had those, how Willie always talks about the conclusions, and he talks about the whole episode, but then he kind of makes it relate to the viewers as well, and he gives some kind of insight, or he leaves the audience with something to think about. So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples, a few examples from Raymond's Run. And the reason I'm using Raymond's Run is because I've noticed whenever I use examples from Red Guard, we tend to just want to copy those examples. So listen to these examples of conclusions and how they, number one, they have their thesis in there, and number two, they kind of leave you with something deeper than just saying, and that is my essay, or that is my thesis or paper about Red Guard. And I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next time, okay? This needs to be very formal. So, follow along as I read this to you. In Raymond's Run, Squeaky is very aggressive in how she competes, communicates, and protects. We learned that being aggressive can actually have negative consequences. You can end up building a wall around yourself and shutting others out. Like Squeaky, I used to think that if I built barriers, I would be able to keep those who I felt could hurt me out. But in reality, I was only pushing away those people who cared about me. This story is teaching me how important it is to open up and let people in. So this author got very personal with the story. You can do that in your conclusions. That's fine. Let's take a look at another example. They're stating their thesis. It doesn't always have to be the first sentence, but usually, typically, a lot of authors do that. As you can see, there's a transition. Squeaky is aggressive in how she competes, communicates, and protects. When you are aggressive in building walls around yourself and others, you don't just end up protecting yourself, you end up closing out the world. There's no guarantee that without walls you won't get hurt. But what we learn from the story is that sometimes the possibility of getting hurt is worth the risk, because you never know how you can grow, or who you can become, or who you can be with friends without taking a chance. So, this kind of sounds like a Duck Dynasty episode to me. You know, they're leaving a general thought for their readers. It's almost like giving you a charge. Like, think about this. You know, be motivated. They're really trying to leave you with something positive. Okay, and finally, this third example gives kind of a play on words from the story. Do you remember at the very end of Raymond's Run how Squeaky talked about smiling, and her and Gretchen actually smiled at each other like they was people? Like they was people, she said, instead of being strawberries or whatever you aren't supposed to, or whatever you want to be other than yourself. Okay, so she talks about smiling. So listen to this conclusion on how they kind of pull in something from the story. In conclusion, there's our transition. Squeaky is aggressive in how she competes, communicates, and protects. We watch as Squeaky learns to open up from her aggressiveness, to stop being so protective that she builds a wall around herself and those she loves. The story teaches us that even a little crack in the wall will do, that a simple smile or a change in thinking could have big results. We can all learn from Squeaky. Even if we are not pushing everyone away all the time, we can all learn to take a risk in our lives and to open up to others around a little bit more. Only then will we see the true smiles around us. All right? So, show me with your fingers 1, 2, or 3. Which conclusion did you like best? Just why do you say 1, 2? Okay. So, think about, these all are great conclusions, but they all use a different way to pull at the audience. You need to think about how do you want to pull at your audience. So that's the first goal you're going to do in Writer's Workshop today. The second thing you need to do is you need to go back through that checklist that I showed you. And I want you to think about your transitions, your ending, your organization, everything else on there. Yes, even the spelling and the grammar. The nice thing about working on Google Docs is that it takes care of that for most of the time. But do you know I still see sentences written like this? Lowercase I will go. What's wrong with that I?
Gotta be capital.
Thank you. So do that. The other thing is, the reason I was able to read these conclusions with emphasis and with a certain rhythm to it is because the readers added a dash, or they would add commas or periods, things like that.
Did you write those or no actual?
Use punctuation, please, in your writing, okay? If a reader is supposed to pause or you want to make a certain emphasis on something, put a period there, put a dash, put parentheses where you need parentheses, use your punctuation, okay? So you are completely checking everything off that list because today is the last day you will have to work on the Red Guards essay. So if you have questions, you can stay here, but other than that, you can get to work.